everybody, and welcome to today's online workshop. Today we're going to be talking about Unity 101, setting up for success. So covering a lot of the basics of how you can get started with using Unity. Very exciting stuff. So you may know me, I am Kat, and I work as community manager for Code Club in England. And that means that I work to support Code Clubs across the country, help them be engaged and to get clubs set up, but also keep running them. I'm a Unity newbie, so I'm really excited to be here today with some of our experts. And I'm also joined here today by Nuala. Do you want to say hello?
Yes, I do. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Nuala. I'm the Global Engagement Manager with the CoderDojo Foundation, and I work to connect and encourage volunteers all around the world to share their experiences and learnings to help develop and grow the community. Liz, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Liz. I'm a learning coordinator in the informal learning team, writing these projects and other projects for you to use in your clubs.
Thanks so much, Liz. And Tracy, do you want to say hello as well?
Hi, yeah, I'm Tracy Gardner. I work with Liz. We write projects that are used by Code Club and CoderDojo, and we were the authors of this Unity path. My background is as a computer scientist, and I've also run a Code Club and a CoderDojo, so I kind of know where you're coming from, as Liz does also.
So we'll be talking a little bit about the very basic question, what is Unity? If you've not heard of Unity before, or if you're not particularly familiar, we'll be covering what it is and how you can use it. We'll also be introducing our new path of projects. So the thing that's inspired the session today is lots of new exciting resources we've created for you and your clubs to use. We'll be telling you a bit about those. We'll be sharing how you can get set up to use Unity, so what software you'll need to download, the different steps you'll need to take to get that set up. And we'll also go through a bit of an overview of the different elements of Unity as well, and a little about C#, which is the programming language that Unity uses as well. We will share a recording of this call tomorrow, as well as a set of the slides with all of the different links in it. So if you'd like to share it with anyone else, if you want to recap, you'll be able to do that when you get a copy tomorrow. So don't worry if you miss anything. And without further ado, I think we're gonna kick things off and get started with a bit of a quick kind of introduction. So, as I say, what is Unity? Well, if you've never heard of Unity before, Unity is a popular development platform for creating 3D video games and virtual worlds that are in 3D. So you may have heard of some of the different tools and games that have used Unity to create their products. So Among Us, the very popular pandemic viral game, was created using Unity. There are also a couple of Pokemon games, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which used Unity to create their games as well. So it's a professional tool. It's a tool that lots of different games creators use, but it's also used for creating lots of other different things as well that involve 3D and interactive spaces. The great thing about Unity is it's free, so anyone can use it, and that's partly, I think, why it's so widely used. And it also has cross-platform support as well, so you can build projects that are used in desktops, mobile, also interactive reality, web consoles, all sorts of different things all use Unity. So it's really versatile as a tool. If you have used Unity before, I'd love to hear that in the questions box, but also if you think you're a little nervous, if there's anything about Unity that maybe worries you a bit, pop that into the questions box as well. We'd love to hear about it. It's a really powerful, really exciting tool, but it's also a bit of a daunting thing perhaps if you've never used it before. So let us know if you've got any kind of worries or concerns as well. What's really exciting, like I mentioned at the start of the call, is that we have these new Unity projects. So what we want to do with these projects is help introduce Unity to young people. The ideal kind of young person to kind of use these projects would be somebody who's already fairly familiar with using a text-based language, so perhaps they've coded in a bit of Python before. And the great thing about these projects is the young people can gain a bit more independence. This project set works through different steps, and you can build up a product as you go through the path. So there's some really useful things you can do to gain a bit more of independence whilst using these projects as well. And the path introduces not just the Unity software, so you learn about how to use Unity and create these kind of 3D projects, but you also get to learn a little bit about using C#, which is the coding language that these projects use. We'll talk a bit more about C# later in the call and go through a few kind of key points that you'll need to know about that. I'm going to stop talking about the projects because I'm not the mastermind behind it. Tracy and Liz, you are the mastermind behind these new projects. I'd be really interested to know about what you're kind of aiming to kind of get out of this path? What were the goals of creating this Unity project path?
Yeah, sure. So what we really wanted to do was demystify Unity. So Unity is a really big piece of software. There's lots of things it can do. So what we wanted to do was identify a subset that we could teach to young people so that they could become effective quickly. So this path won't teach them everything about Unity, but what it will do is teach them this small subset that they can use to create a variety of different kinds of projects by the end.
That's brilliant.
Liz, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's it, isn't it? It's the being able to create that wide range from a small subset, and it's something that we did kind of go back and forward on a lot and try and work out exactly what we wanted that to be, and yes, keep it so it's definitely beginner level, and they can create the things they want to make.
That's brilliant. And the project path really covers lots of different things, so I think it's really exciting. Do you have a favourite project from the path that you'd like to share?
Well, you go first.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple. There's definitely like when I'm doing it, when I'm working through it, I love world builder for sure, being creative in that way. But I think when I run it with young people, I love the first one, Explore a 3D World, because it's got so many of the like eureka moments, like when they first get the character moving or animated, or take like a simple shape and all of a sudden they've got like this realistic wall, and yeah, there's lots of like they just kind of eyes sparkle when they realize like how easy it is to do the things that they want to do and what their output is. It's really nice. What about you, Tracy?
I think for me, it's 3D Adventure, which is the final project. So it's a sort of capstone project at the end of the path where there's a lot of openness. We give a project brief, and the learners have quite a bit of scope for what they can do. They could make something more game focused, or they could make something that's more a visual novel if they want to tell a story. And I just love seeing young people make things that I didn't think of. When they put together all the skills in a way that I hadn't imagined, I go, oh wow, yeah, that's something you could do. And that's what's so fantastic when we get the kind of imagination, the background of the young people coming into it, and they really make something that we wouldn't have made. That's what I love.
Very good answers. I have to say, as a newbie, I think my favourite is probably just Explore a 3D World, just getting to try it all out and realize what you can make with this. It's amazing to kind of realize that you can make games too. So I got very excited. But yeah, lots of different stuff for young people to try, a real kind of range of projects. And as Tracy said, you get to finish off with this amazing thing that you create yourself, which is really exciting. And we love to see those projects as well. Brilliant. So, Unity is great and very exciting, but what exactly will young people make within this kind of project path? They'll get to try making games, they'll get to try making worlds with quests, they'll get to try making role player games, and also interactive stories as well. So there's loads of different variety. And the path covers mini games, it covers character dialogue. They'll get to make non-playable characters, so that might be enemies, it might just be characters that their player character can interact with within the world that they've made. They'll get to have a look at player character movement and animation. They'll get to try managing the game and story state with variables, and they'll get to make something called particle systems. Now, I didn't know what particle systems were. Tracy and Liz, could you clarify for someone who's maybe not used Unity before?
Sure. So particle systems are what you use to create all those little sparkly effects that you see in games. So something that gives you a clue that something's interesting, perhaps you see something out of the corner of your eye sparkling or glowing over in the corner, and particle systems are the way that you create those. And it was one of those features that we decided to include because it just has that bit of a wow factor. So Unity has lots of things that we didn't include, but that one made it in because it's just fun to play around with, and you can create some really cool effects with not much code or configuration, and we really enjoy playing around with them. So we hope young people will too.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. It's not just the structure of a game, it's also all the cool details as well that you get to have a go at, which is really exciting. Amazing. So if this sounds exciting, if this is something you want to try, there is some setup involved, and we want to make sure we kind of go through that now. Shall I hand over to you, Tracy, to talk through a bit of what the setup looks like?
Yeah, sure. So I think the key thing we want to get across with this is that you do need to do a bit of preparation if you want to run Unity in your setting. You can't just sort of turn up and say, go to this website and off you go like you might be able to for Scratch. you do need software installed, and Liz is going to take you through in a moment what that involves. You will need to make sure that you've got computers that are powerful enough, so that's something to check out. We've given a link there. Unity have information on what you need, and you will need to have a set of software installed and set up. And again, we've provided links and guides. If you're installing it on individual computers for yourself, or for learners perhaps in a CoderDojo who are using their own computers, then you'll follow the process today. But if you're in a school setting or a library setting where there's a network, there's also information for a network install and how to get that set up. So we've linked to that. But Liz is going to take you through the setup you'd need to do on your computer, which I'd recommend is the first thing you do if you want to try this path. Install it yourself and try it out and understand, because the software is big and takes time to download. So that's something to be aware of if you're in a setting that doesn't have brilliant bandwidth. So it's just really doing that bit of advanced preparation so that you're in a good position when you start that first project, that everything's going to go smoothly from there.
So as Tracy said, we made a series of just short little videos so that you could see us kind of walking through the process as well. So the first one is just really kind of where to find paths. So from the project site, we've got this all new path header. And from there, you'll find the Unity path is one of the ones that's listed. And the 6 projects are then shown in the order that the young people would go through them. If you're used to using our paths, it's a very similar format of some of the others. In the first project, this Explore 3D World, on the very first step, you've got this You Will Need section. This is really useful. This is all the things you need to do to prepare beforehand. So we've got this Unity guide that's linked from there. And once this loads, it's just a series of tasks that you need to go through. So the very first one is to actually install the Unity Hub. We've got a link there through to the Unity website for you to do that. And then it just lists it for the different operating systems. So just download the one for your operating system. I think the guide, we took the screenshots on our Windows machine, and the videos we've done on a Mac. So I know we've still not covered everybody, but we've tried to give it so that you've got the resources to see both. But they're really not too dissimilar anyway. So you can follow through the guide or the videos to set up either way. The next thing you need to do, so once you've actually install the Unity Hub, is to install the Unity editor. And the first time you go into the hub, you'll get automatically prompted to do this and to install it. And once it's installed, you'll see it in your applications. As Tracy said, this bit does take a long time, so it's not something to do in your first session. It definitely needs to be done in advance. And the other thing you need to install is the Visual Studio module. So again, you'll do this from the Unity Hub. And it's just shown in the guide what you need to do, but we've actually got a little preview here. So you go to install and then check out the settings, and you'll see it there listed as one of the modules that you can add, and then you add it in and then it's available. So it's a really good tool to use. It integrates so well with Unity, and we're going to go through loads of the benefits later on of having both the Unity editor and Visual Studio installed. They're the 2 main things. Once it's installed, there is like another step that you just need to check. So chances are this is already defaulted for you, but once you've installed the module, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily noted as the default external tools script editor for Unity. So it's something just to check, really. So Unity has got this external tools menu, and in there you'll see like the script editor and the drop down. So just make sure that that's Visual Studio there. It just saves kind of a lot of pain later on, I guess, if you make sure that's ticked. But yeah, it should be, but definitely just double check anyway.
There's one other piece that you'll need before starting the first project, and this is a Unity package. So this contains lots of reusable assets that you'll use in the project. So this is something people often wonder when they start with Unity, well, where do I get those graphics from? Where do I get the sound effects from? So for this path, we've provided a set, and you will have to download that beforehand. We've tried to make this as small a download as we can, But again, we'd recommend that you did this beforehand and got hold of that, so that you haven't got lots of learners on the same network trying to download it at the same time. So Liz will show you how this works.
So once you've installed everything, then that's it. You can close that guide down and return back to the first project. And you see there the second link, so the Unity Startup Package link. And as Tracy said, that's going to download a zip file. So just extract it and save it somewhere that the young people can access. And then that really is it in terms of the full preparation. When the young people are starting their first project, just to show you the steps that they'll go through to create it, and then you're kind of familiar with what it'll look like. So, yeah, they go to the Unity Hub and create a new project from there. It's all 3D projects that we're using, so they'll create a new 3D project and give it a sensible name and store it in a sensible place that they can find it. And then once they've created the project, it appears in the list in the Unity Hub. So they would just click on it from there, and then it launches in the Unity editor, ready for them to work on. Once they've got their new projects open and they're in the Unity editor, and you'll see that they have kind of like a pretty blank project, so they'll go there, they will import the package, so you'll just need a way to tell them where you've saved the package to. And then when they open it, they'll see all the files then will appear, all the models and assets and everything that they can use within the project will be loaded then into their projects. I didn't cut this video, so I just kept it so you could see how long it took. So it's not something that takes a long time to do, but it's not something that's instantaneous either. But yeah, once the package is loaded, they'll be able to progress with the project. So they're just those last two videos just to kind of show you the steps that the young people go through.
So we mentioned there that you need this package of assets. So one of the things you'll find in Unity is there's lots of terminology, and I think I've already seen a mention of that coming up in the chat. And that's one of the things that this path will do. It will take you through, introduce that terminology in context when you need it, and demystify all of those things. But basically, asset is the word that Unity uses for all these reusable graphic and sound files that you can use in multiple projects. So 3D models are one of the important ones. So we went to some effort for this path to find some good 3D models that we could use. And this path was a collaboration with Unity, and they kindly gave us access to some great assets that they've developed. You've seen a little bit of them in some of the videos with the raccoon and so on. So you'll see a lot more of those if you come to the second seminar in this series, where we'll actually look at the projects in more detail. But those are already created, and they come with some fun animations that are already there that can be used within the project. But I think it's worth mentioning that those files are the same things that can be created using Blender. So we also have some Blender paths, and if you have learners who are familiar with Blender, then they will be able to import the assets. So that isn't something we cover in the path, but at the end of the path, that is something they'll be able to do. We include various materials and textures, which are basically the images that get put onto 3D models to determine what they look like. And we include some sound files. And the other kind of asset in Unity is scripts. And for the most part in the path, the learners will be writing their own scripts in C#. So we'll come back to that a little bit more. But there's all that terminology. But basically, those are all the reusable things that you can use in a Unity project. And here's the Unity editor. So again, this is something that it can be quite overwhelming when you first open up Unity. There are all these different sections, and this is something that we do very much go through in the path. We'll introduce you to these things gradually as you need to use them. And we cover lots of the things that learners can get confused about. To be quite honest, the things that Liz and I got confused by as we were first starting to use this, and we've tried to kind of encode all of that into the project so that it's all introduced gradually. So in Unity, you have a mixture of creating things graphically in a 3D world, dragging things around, moving things around, positioning them, and then writing code. So if you're familiar with Scratch, it's not too dissimilar a model. So in Scratch, you would be moving your sprites around on the stage and positioning them, and then you would be writing your code, your blocks to control them. And Unity has a similar setup, except that when you do code, you go out into a code editor, and that's all linked together by Unity. So we'll come back to this a bit more in the next sessions where we go through, but this just gives you an overview of what Unity looks like when you open it up. Okay, so C# is the programming language that Unity uses. Text-based programming language. It's a language that's used in industry. It's not just used in Unity, it's used for lots of different software development. And so if learners learn C#, they're getting a real transferable skill there. So C# is an object-oriented language. So for those of you who haven't come across object-oriented languages, it's quite similar to the idea in Scratch that you have sprites that have clones. So you define what one instance looks like, and you can create lots of similar ones. So C# is an object-oriented language. So you'll see some of the terminology from that in Unity and in the past. And again, we introduce all of this as learners need it in the project. So you'll see it when we see a script in a moment, you'll see that terminology popping up. So Unity talks about having a script, and you create scripts, and Unity actually creates an example script for you every time. You get a template, which is fantastic. So you'll see code, but often the learners aren't having to type all of that. And that's a really important thing for making this content accessible to learners who perhaps aren't as fast at typing or as accurate as typing as older beginners might be. So yeah, so you can use these scripts, you write a script, and then you can reuse them in your project. So you'll come across some of this terminology. There's a lot of it to get your head around at first, but as you get into Unity and through the path, you know, we introduce it slowly and gradually, and suddenly you find you're talking in terms of scripts and methods, and it all makes sense. Okay, we'll go to the next one.
Okay.
So this is a C# script. So this is just the template that gets created. Every time you create a script in Unity, you're not starting from an empty file. It puts this in for you in the editor, and this is fantastic. It's all color coded and is really, really nice and neat. So the basic concept here is that you've got a class which will be applied to one of your game objects in Unity. Everything in Unity is called a game object. So where in Scratch you had sprites, in Unity you have game objects, and it sets everything up for you. So you have code that runs when a game object gets created, and code that gets run every time the screen updates. So we go through all this in detail, but this is just to give you an example of what a C# script looks like. So the things to look out for if you're coming from a Python background is you'll see lots of curly brackets here. So Python indents code when it wants to nest scopes. C# uses curly brackets. So that'll be one thing. One of the things that you'll have to get your heads around, and your learners will have to get your heads around. The syntax is slightly different. But I have to say, Unity does a really good job of giving you really helpful error messages, which really help solve a lot of these problems. Okay, now to the next one.
We like that. We love the error messages.
So helpful.
Really helpful. Okay, I just wanted to kind of put a video together to show you how the two integrate, and it kind of links back to that question that we just had about whether to use Visual Studio or something else. So if we see here, this is the Unity editor, and there's a raccoon character here, one of the models that we include in the starter package. So we're going to add a script to it. So I'll just show you, I'll run through the video and kind of talk over what's happening. But you add a component to this game object, to this raccoon of a script. So it will create the new file for you. And what it actually does, it adds it here so that you know it's part of the raccoon character, but also in your project window, you see it there as well in your, like the actual file in the file system. And then if you click to open it, it automatically opens Visual Studio. with that script open. So it's just showing you here it launching up, and then you can see the starter code that Tracy mentioned there. I've just like put a lot of code in to get it to move around. So this is kind of like the code that the young people build up to at the end of the first project. And then you just save that code, and then you return back to the Unity editor. And when you do that, it automatically compiles it. As Tracy said, if you have any errors, it shows you there in the console what the errors are. But then you run you play your project to see the impact. So here it'll change view in a minute. So we're looking through the camera, but basically pressing the arrow keys now, and the raccoon can move around the world. So that's why it is quite a smooth process to go between kind of creating the script in the Unity editor, opening Visual Studio in the script editor, and then just saving it and it compiling, and then being able to play the updates basically. So that's kind of the process that they'll go through, and how the projects work is they'll add the code like a little bit at a time. So there is a lot of like going to the scripts editor and back to Unity to see the changes that you've made, and then maybe tinkering with something or adding a bit more code. So there's a lot of switching backwards and forwards between those two things. So yeah, so it integrates really well actually. There's some other benefits as well. So Tracy, do you want to, when I can move on, explain some of the other things?
Sure. So this is sort of what we were sort of touching about the benefits. So there is this strong integration with Visual Studio. So it has a feature called IntelliSense, which will complete code automatically when you start typing. So when you see code in the projects, quite often the learners don't need to type all of that code. They'll start typing, and then they'll be offered a choice, and they'll just be able to select it and say that's what I want, and then the code appears. So that really saves, it reduces typing, but it also increases accuracy. You're not introducing so many of those little errors that you introduce when you make a small mistake, because the code got added for you. So we found that's really useful. It means you can build up a project more quickly than you might imagine when you see the code. The other one is that the helpful debugging feedback, and it really is quite good. It will tell you what mistake you've made and allow you to click on it and go and see, and often actually tells you what you need to do to fix it. So we found this is really helpful. So that's something I'd really definitely draw attention to the learners. We do it in the projects, but draw attention to the fact that there is some really helpful feedback built into the tool there. And we've also put lots of specific debug advice in our projects. So if something goes wrong, and it really will, you know, we made all the mistakes when we were writing this path, so that we could capture all that knowledge and put it into the projects. We've included a lot of that in the projects as we go along. So it doesn't just tell you in the good case, you know, this is what happens. There's lots of debug built into the projects of all the mistakes you can make. And say if you make new mistakes that we didn't make, we'd love to hear about that. There's a feedback link at the bottom of every page. So we always love to hear if someone went differently wrong, and then we can add to the project to steer future learners on the right path.
Great. So just some of the projects that young people have created, and it kind of gives you an idea of the different scope of projects that young people can make after they've completed this path. So we have this mini golf game that 5 young people from Dublin in Ireland came together and worked on through their online sessions. So they had they divvied up the work. So one young person was doing a prototype in Scratch, and other young people were making different elements to the game, designing the golf ball, and then another one designing the course, and using Unity in that way. They found it really motivating to be able to work as a team on it together. We also have Erin from the UK, who created a 2D game. So just that there is different options out there, that not everything is 3D in Unity. You can also develop 2D side scroller kind of platform games as well. And she used Desk Sketchbook to draw her characters and then add them into Unity. So there is a lot of options to integrate the different like Blender characters or things that other young people have made in different programs and bring them into Unity before they code their game. And then we have this project, which is from Unity's website. They have a tutorial on how to make a game like this, and Oisín developed it in Ireland using those tutorials, and he modeled some additional characters in Blender as well and added them in. And some of the great flickering animations of the lights really make the haunted house seem very scary. So these are just a selection of some of the projects that were entered into Coolest Projects last year that were developed in Unity. And I'd love to tell you a little bit more about Coolest Projects. I've seen someone in the chat already mentioned that they have some Unity projects being worked on for this year's Coolest Projects, which is great to hear. But Coolest Projects is an online technology showcase for young people. So there are 6 project categories that young people can enter their projects into. There's Scratch, mobile apps, hardware, advanced programming, web development, and then there's also games. And it inspires and rewards young people's innovation and their creativity developing these games. And also, similar to Unity, it is free to enter, so that's a really great incentive. And this year there's a lot of new things for the showcase. So as well as there being the online showcase as normal, where young people can share their projects, see what other projects are being developed in the same category as them and in the same country as them. They can see what's being developed in all different countries. They can also get digital and physical swag this year, which is new, and also they can get direct feedback from the judges. So after the awards of the favorites has been announced, everyone who enters a project in Coolest Projects will get direct feedback about their project. And this is something that young people ask for themselves as a way to help encourage them to develop their skills even further. We've new project topics, and this is really great for helping young people come up with ideas for their projects. So there's health, environment, community, art, and much more. And also, as well as those topics, young people, they don't need to only make a project specific to one topic. For example, if they were doing something on, say, air pollution, it might incorporate the topics of health and the environment, and they're allowed interlink topics like that, so they can have a project that covers multiple topics. For each of the favorites this year, they will get a commemorative medal, and also we've made some improvements to the registration process. And I have a question here of, can young people enter beginner projects? And the answer is yes. So all levels of projects, from complete beginners to more advanced coders, can enter their projects. So it doesn't matter if a young person, it might be their first project, or they might be trying out Unity for the first time. The level or the complexity of the project is not the deciding factor, is not important for participating in the showcase. And some of these key dates, so people are aware and they can mark them in their calendars. So project registration opens in 12 days time, so the 14th of February. So from that date, young people, if they've already been working on a project, they might have something ready to go, they can enter their project from that date. But there's a wide open window for the registration process. So they have over the next 3 months until the 11th of May to come up with their idea, start coding something, putting their project together, and presenting it for the showcase before the May 11th deadline. And then we have our celebration ceremony, which is a live stream ceremony where we'll highlight all different projects from around the world and announce the VIP favorites in mid-June. So another question here, do projects need to be finished? And the answer is no. So if a young person doesn't have their project fully completed, or they feel like it's not finished completely, that is not a barrier to entry. So we really encourage the innovation and creativity of young people, and the idea of the showcase is just to show what young people have made. So it doesn't matter how far they've got through a project, or if they don't feel it's finished, they're allowed to just say that in their presentation video, and they can also say what they might have added on if they had more time. So projects do not need to be finished by that deadline to enter. If you need any additional help and support, we have our 2 support email inboxes here. So support@coclub.org if you're part of a co-club, and info@coderdojo.org as well if you're running a dojo. And if you're thinking about resuming your sessions either in person or running online or sending out activities, we have those 2 web pages which give you details and guidance on how to do that if your club has been paused during this time. And also I want to highlight our upcoming workshop next week, where we will be going more in depth into that project pathway. So going into detail of how to create 3D worlds with Unity next week. So do make sure to join us for that and register if you haven't signed up already. And finally, thank you so much for joining us here today. You can keep the discussion going in our Slack channel that Kat mentioned. So that link is dojo.soy/Slack. And you can ask each other questions if anyone has any trouble. I seen George and a few others were offering support there. So it'd be great to have more of these discussions about getting started with Unity in that Slack instance as well. Great. And thank you so much to Liz and Tracy for joining us here today, and for Kat for taking part in the discussion, and all of you who've been here throughout the call. And we have a small feedback survey at the end of the call, which we'd really appreciate you giving your input on. And I'll leave you there, and I hope you have a lovely day.